What is going on? This is Tyler Smith with Intrinsecus. Glad to have you back. I'm going to be honest, guys. I can't do every week. I am not at that level of consistency where I can come up with great topics to talk about every week. As you guys have been seeing, if you guys have been watching, every episode has been getting shorter and shorter. I think that is because when I first started, I had a lot to say and I had a lot on my mind. And now I'm kind of going through that writer's block or podcaster's block of trying to figure out what to talk about. So right now I'm kind of just living life, going through life, reading books, reading news articles, watching podcasts or listening to podcasts, watching movies. And I go, that's something I want to talk about. So today, hopefully this will be a 15-20 minute episode where we can start some conversations. We can, start some discussions, and that way we can build a better culture. But I do want to bring up some housekeeping. So I have signed up for a thing called Gettr, however you want to pronounce it. It is an alternative to Twitter. It's the same type of micro blog, social media website. I will be posting my thoughts there. Twitter has decided to become the arbiter of truth. That's a whole nother political discussion I'm not going to have right now. Maybe in the future, maybe with some guests. You never know. Wink, wink, stomp, stomp. But with them deciding to become the arbiter of truth, I've decided that I'm going to go to Gettr, which is a quickly or fast expanding social media website. I do need to get on other social media websites to get this message out. But for anyone who wants to see more updates, just go to Gettr. And you'll see posts, once or twice a day with just what's going on in my mind. And then I reply to a lot of big name thinkers or independent thinkers, and I try to challenge their thoughts as well. Future episodes are going to be sparing. They're going to come and go whenever I can come up with a good topic. Reading a lot of good books, but I do not want to come off as a motivational, inspirational guy who's just saying, you can do it. I want to actually have robust, in-depth podcasts to actually stir up some thoughts with people. I'm still working on getting these podcasts on other platforms. I was using DistroKid, which is usually for songs, but I need to find a audio sharing service that does podcasts and not just songs. That way it can be on Apple Podcasts instead of Apple Music. It could be on Google Podcasts instead of Google Music or whatever that is called. All right, housekeeping's over. What are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about suffering and slippery slope. So, story time. I like to start these off with stories. So I go to the gym. There's an individual there. I want to say he's 23. Yeah, his birthday just passed. He's 23 years old. Happy birthday to him. And we chit chat. I come to the gym. I take my pre-workout, and we have a little chit chat where we kind of just scrub each other's brains and see how each other are doing. He started talking to me. He's like, hey, I really want to learn. I want to learn how to debate better. I have a lot of ideas, but, I tend to lose and I get in my emotions. I get upset. What are some things I can do to, expand my, expand my knowledge, expand my ability to debate? Well, I was like, first you got to understand what debating is. You got to understand what it means to be a good debater. You got to also watch good people. So I told him to watch Intelligence Squared, which is a YouTube channel that has very, 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 very professional debates on it, pros and cons for multitudes of issues. I told him to watch, people like Ben Shapiro, he's a very controversial figure, but what he does really well is he makes a box and then stands in a box and says, I'm not leaving the box. If you're going to debate, we're going to debate the box, which is just a tactic to be very strong and not let yourself be pulled which way in the other. I told him to watch or listen to people like Jordan Peterson, who is a person who is willing to open himself up for attacks, for the possibility of learning, but also knows when to stand his ground. So I told him to do things like that. Then he also asked me, what else did he ask me? He also asked me, how do I retain knowledge? I was like, well, learn something you actually give a crap about. For me, I don't give a crap about makeup, so I could read a whole book on how to do blush and and blending and mascara and cat eyes. Guarantee in 3 months I won't remember none of that because I just don't care about it. So I was like, do things like that. Also learn history. If you want to be able to retain things, you have to learn history. That way you can connect the present to the past, because there's never anything new under the sun. The earth tends to rotate. It tends to spin. It's going to spin today, it's going to spin tomorrow, it's going to spin 10 years from now, and the sun is going to burn today, it's going to burn tomorrow, it's going to burn 10 years from now. The only difference is we get older, we die, and a new human is born. That's the only difference, and humans will continue to act the way humans act. Humans have been very consistent over mankind. The only thing that's changed is technology and how quickly we go through our our societal cycles of, expansion, growth, empires, and then empires fall, and then the same cycle goes over and over and over and again. The only difference is the technology, and technology just seems to speed that cycle up a little bit. But, I walked away from the conversation saying, wow, I have a person here who really wants to better himself, who really wants to learn how to do things better, how to become smarter, how to become more intelligent, and not learn how to stand his ground. But I was thinking as I was working out, I was like, I told him a lot of good tips. I told him a lot of things, but I didn't give him any mechanics. So the next time I talked to him, I was like, hey man, something you got to be mindful of is, philosophical fallacies or debate fallacies. And anyone who knows this, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but those are going to be your ad hominems, your red herrings, your straw mans, and things like that. I gave him some tips of it. I was like, hey, if you want to really understand these, there's a good book called Models of Critical Thinking. It's a simple read. It just kind of goes through all those philosophical and logical fallacies, and then how to defend against them. But I was like, one thing you need to understand though is like there is a fallacy called slippery slope. And it's a fallacy, but it tends to be true. And what I mean by it tends to be true is that humans go through a cycle, right? We're born, we grow, we go through puberty, we hit our prime, we start aging, our hormones change, and then we die. And then another human's born, they go through puberty, they hit their prime, their hormones drop, they die. And it's a constant over and over. The only difference is some humans die of heart disease, some humans die of cancer, some humans die of Alzheimer's, some humans die by car crash, some humans die as a soldier in war. But generally, humans are born, humans progress, hit prime, degress, or regress. I'm sorry, not degress. They regress and then they die. You need to understand that trajectory will always happen. Now, slippery slope is a fallacy, and you can over exaggerate it, but just understand that everything does have secondary, tertiary, or second, third, and fourth order effects. Now, a lot of guys who might be listening to for the first time might be saying, hey, what is a slippery slope argument? So I'm just going to give you a quick academia version of what I'm really talking about here. So a slippery slope argument in logic, or logic is a subset of philosophy, is the fallacy of arguing that a certain course of action is undesirable, or that a certain proposition is implausible because it leads to an undesirable or implausible conclusion via a series of tenuous connected premises, each of which is understood to lead causally or logically to the premise or the conclusion that follows it. An example of a slippery slope argument is the following. Legalizing prostitution is undesirable because it would cause more marriages to break up, which would in turn cause a breakdown of the family, which would finally result in the destruction of civilization. Now, if you're doing a formal professional debate, someone will call you out on that statement. If someone was to say, hey, we want to argue for women's rights. Women's rights should also include prostitution, which is rights over the body, rights to sell one's own body for profit, the same way strippers do. So we just take it the next step further and say prostitution or being an escort should be legal. Someone may take that premise. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with it. I'm saying in a debate, someone might take that premise and someone might say, well, hey, legalizing prostitution is undesirable because it would cause more marriages to break up, which would in turn cause a breakdown of the family, which would finally result in the destruction of civilization. That person will be called out for a slippery slope argument. They're like, whoa, you just jumped way to conclusions, right? So layman's term is you just jumped way to conclusions. But let's have a conversation though. Is that statement wrong? Can prostitution lead to marriages breaking up? Yes, but let's explain that, right? So let's take the slippery slope argument and make the slope less steep. Well, if prostitution is legal, some, not all, some partners in a marriage, and being male or female, may use said service. Some, not all, right? It may be 1%, it may be 2%, it may be 0.5% of partners in marriages, but some may use that service, which in turn may cause a divorce, which divorces tend to, as we've seen through empirical data over the past 40 years, 40 to 60 years, we've seen how divorces hurt the family. Right, puts the kids through a lot of stress. A lot of kids don't understand, and then you have custody battles. It gets ugly, right? I don't want to get too much into that part of it, and that can result in the destruction of civilization when we have the breakdown of the nuclear family. Now that is a less steep or less slippery slope or way of saying the same thing. But slippery slopes still happen, and they're still very, very prevalent in our society. But we need to understand. But we need to understand how to express those. For instance, I'll take a prime topic: student loans. If you would have went back to the 80s and you would have said, hey, guaranteeing student loans or having the federal government back student loans is going to lead to a large sum of the American population being debt ridden to the point to where they're going to call for socialism in the governments to cancel their debt. Oh, and by the way, you're going to cause a cultural revolution to say that everybody lottie-dottie needs to go to college to get a degree. Now you have a unproductive workforce because everyone's going to college. Someone's going to be like, dude, chill out. Everyone should go to college, right? Or you say, hey, if we today, i.e. back in the 80s, you know what? Let me double check my work here. I'm going to go to the old search engines. The government. Okay, so I lied. So it's not the 80s. In 1965, the federal government began guaranteeing student loans provided by banks and nonprofit lenders, creating the program that is now called the Federal Family Education Loan, the FFEL program. Okay, so let's say it's back to 1965. If you'd have said to a senator or a congressperson in 1965 that, hey, if you do this, we're going to see a dramatic increase in college tuition prices 60 years later. So not only in 60 years are we going to see a drastic increase in college tuition prices, we're going to see a large swath of our American population, 3 generations worth, debt-ridden and debt-laden to the point to where they are negative in their net worth. And they're going to call for socialism, the downfall of capitalism, the downfall of the free market, because culturally, the universities, the government, and the parents have said, if you want to be successful, you need to have a 4-year degree and a piece of paper. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have a shortage of blue-collar workers because you have completely demonized electricians, plumbers, et cetera, and so forth on. Someone's going to say, whoa, what are you talking about? What are you freaking talking about here? We just want to do good by the American people. People want to go to college. Some people are poor. They need to go to college, or they need the opportunity to go to college. Well, they're wrong. And this is why. Because of this, the federal government guaranteeing student loans, we have seen a drastic increase in college tuition. We have seen kids coming out $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in debt. We have seen 3 generations now call for socialism. We have seen 3 generations call for canceling the debt. Joe Biden, the POTUS, has said, I want to cancel $10,000. Obviously, that didn't happen. I'm not going to go into that side of politics. But this has become a recurring theme. And now you have a society that has looked down upon plumbers, electricians, and blue-collar workers, even though if you were to take an 18-year-old kid, 2 18-year-old kids, one became an electrician apprentice, one went to college. By the time they're 30, the electrician is going to have a higher net worth, more skills, and be way happier in a better place than a kid coming out at 22, 23, $50,000 of student loan debt, probably 7-8% APY on it. They can't really catch up. They can't really get a job because lottie-dottie, everyone has a bachelor's degree, which has essentially caused college degree inflation, which now you need a master's today for what you need a bachelor's for 10 years ago, and that's only going to get worse. And this ball just keeps going down the slope, right? And we see this slippery slope argument. But if you just say in 1965 that, hey, if you do this today, in 60 years, we're all going to be screwed. So the point I'm trying to get across, if I sound like a spaz or I sound discombobulated, is we need to understand that everything we do in life has a second, third, and fourth order effect. And if you want to communicate that with your circle or with the community around you, you need to learn how to do it in steps. You can't go from 1 to 10 and expect people to listen to you. You cannot be intrinsic and have this inwardly truth and inwardly ideas and then try to profess them with a 1 to 10 scenario. You got to go 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And that's what I'm trying to get across. Another thing with the student loans is, if you were to tell someone in 1965, hey, if you do guarantee these guaranteeing of student loans, in 60 years, you're going to have a situation where 23-year-olds do not know how to do work and they are completely useless to the work, to the labor industry. And we're like, what are you talking about? They're like, we are going to guarantee student loans. We being the Senate and Congress and the president, we are going to guarantee student loans so people can go to college so they can become useful. Well, no, that's not what's going to happen in 60 years, because what's going to happen in 60 years is you're going to send kids through 12 years of primary education. Then you're going to send them through another 4 years of bachelor's or undergrad, plus another 2 to 4 for their master's and PhD or however they want to work that. So essentially, 2 to 5 for the PhD master's PhD, I'm sorry. Essentially, you got to send some people to school for 21 years where they're told to sit down, look at a board, take notes, take a test, raise your hand to answer questions, raise your hand if you don't understand something, and then they're going to get out to the workplace, workplace, and go on to the industry, and they're not going to know how to do nothing, and they're going to sit there and say, hey, can you tell me what to do? That part didn't go through anyone's brain. How many people today look for people just to tell them what to do, because their whole lives, at least 16 years, and I cannot talk today, guys. The vast majority of Americans who have a bachelor's degree were in school for 16, 17 years. And the only thing they've known is to sit down, shut up, raise your hand, ask to use a bathroom. Well, if you're in college, you just get up and use the bathroom. But sit down, shut up, make sure you do your homework on time, and make sure you are here for your test and study. What real life skills did that teach them? Now they're getting out, again, $50,000 in student loan debt. They don't know anything about finances. They don't know anything about that at all. They're getting out there. They can't find a job because, again, everyone has a bachelor's degree and they don't have any relevant work experience. They can't pay their bills, live at home with their parents, and we wonder why we have a generation calling for socialism. We wonder why the Democratic Socialists of America are rising. But that sounds like a tinfoil hat. If I was to say that in 1965, they said, hey, go sit in the corner and put your tinfoil hat on. You're a conspiracy theorist. To be an intrinsic person, to have inwardly truth, you need to be able to break down truth, and you need to be able to explain your truth in a consistent manner that's not a slippery slope argument, but you let people know that everything you do has a second, third, and fourth order effect. Everything you do, I'm going to say it again, everything you do has a second and third and fourth order effect, and nothing you do is in a vacuum. Nothing we do as a society is in a vacuum. Nothing. So since nothing we do is in a vacuum, to know yourself is the most powerful thing you can do. But to know yourself, you need to understand how you got to where you are today. And this is where I'm going to really pivot into intrinsic motivation or intrinsic value. The person you got today was not, a to Z scenario. It wasn't like you were born, you came out of the vaginal canal, and boom, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, you're this person who's either in debt, not in debt, successful, not successful, whatever. Everything you did had a second and third order effect. Every time you were too lazy to get off the couch and do a task that took 5 seconds, you built a habit of laziness. Every time you built a habit of procrastination, you reinforced the ideas in your brain to be lazy. Or every time you decided to study and do something good, you built a habit to get you where you are today. And when it comes time to building a culture and sharing this with other people, you need to be able to explain that there's so many people I see on YouTube who are wildly successful. And I'm not talking about like the one-hit wonders or like the TikTok people or anything like that. I'm talking about the people who've honestly built empires. I'm talking about people who've honestly built themselves from rags to riches. I see so many people who've done it, but they can't explain it. And these are the people we need. These are the leaders we need. These are the people who came from the ghettos, who came from parents who did heroin, who came from the parents who were crack addicts, who had a broken family. These are the people who we need to be our community leaders, the people who say, yes, you can do it, but let me show you how to do it. But yet they get on social media and they don't understand how to explain these things. And they literally go from A to Z, and they do a slippery slope argument. But instead of it being an undesirable, outcome, it's a desirable outcome. But you just can't get on social media and say, hey, I built my life. It took 10 years, but now I'm a millionaire. Like, okay, what did you do? Oh, I was in jail. I got out and got my act together. Okay, what happened when you were in jail that made you get your act together? What was that pivotal moment in your life to where you said, that's it, I'm going to change? And those are those A to B to C moments that really make a solid argument that we need to be teaching to a lot of people. Now, suffering. I brought up suffering, and it may seem a little disconjointed to bring this up in today's episode, but I'm going to connect it in a way that hopefully will make sense. So a lot of you guys may have heard this famous quote that is often attributed to Aristotle, and I believe it goes something like this. We are what we repeatedly do. Yes, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Or put more simply, excellence is a habit. And here's another one by Aristotle. It goes, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. So when it comes to suffering, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, and we are what we repeatedly do. So when I say suffering, I do not mean the suffering of the pain you feel when your mother dies or your father dies from cancer. I'm not talking about the suffering when you go bankrupt because your wife or your husband left you and now you can't pay your bills. Yes, that sucks, and that is suffering, and that's a different type of episode. We'll have a different conversation another day. But I'm talking about the suffering where when you go to the gym and you're pushing yourself through pain, but you know you're going to become healthier and you're going to live longer because you're increasing your heart aerobic capacity, you're increasing your lung capacity, and you're making your body healthier. The type of suffering where you are addicted to sugar. Yes, humans can get addicted to sugar and oils. When you're addicted to Chick-fil-A and you can't put down the waffle fries and the Coke, but you decide, I'm going to do it, and then you start driving past Chick-fil-A every day to work, and you smell the scrumptious delicious, spicy chicken deluxe, and you go, nope, I'm not going to go there today. That's suffering. And that's the type of suffering I'm talking about. And it's what we repeatedly do that makes us excellent. And excellence is a habit. But to become excellent, to build those habits, you must first know yourself. It takes wisdom to build a habit. And what I mean by it takes wisdom to build a habit, you have to know why you're doing something. You have to know why you're putting the Coke down, or the worse, the Diet Coke down. You have to know why it's unhealthy to eat Chick-fil-A every day, why it's unhealthy to eat Taco Bell every day. Even though Taco Bell is by far probably one of the best fast food restaurants out there. Unpopular opinion, Taco Bell is the best. But you have to understand why you're doing that. And then once you understand that, that's when you start your journey for wisdom. So all that together, without making this too long, hopefully I'm on track to keep this video in the time frame I wanted. Slippery slopes are terrible arguments. When you're actually having a debate with someone, you have to be very cautious of them because someone can call you out. And if you go from A to Z and just jump to conclusions, you can lose a lot of credibility, with someone else. And if you jump to conclusions with yourself, when you're having those self-talks or the self-dialogues, when you're trying to become a better person, you can lose those crucial baby steps that will help you become successful along the way. So make sure that when you're having those talks with yourself or talks with other people, you're actually breaking things down A to B to C. So when you explain your conclusion, it is a clear representation of your thoughts. And when it comes to suffering, don't be afraid to suffer, because after you have those self-dialogues, especially when you have those self-dialogues when you want to have change and you lay out your A to B to C to D all the way to conclusion, it's going to take some suffering to get to that conclusion, but know why you're doing it. And once you know why you do it, that's the beginning to your wisdom. And hopefully, after weeks, months, you'll become a different person. And I believe the person I talked to at the gym, he's growing every day. He's becoming a different person. He's going through that suffering right now of realizing he doesn't know jack shit. And sometimes that's the hardest part, is like, I don't know jack shit. I don't know nothing, right? And that's the process he's going through right now. But that's going to wrap it up for today. Again, I am Tyler Smith with Intrinsecus, just trying to build better community, better culture. Hopefully, we can break some of the stereotypes and the curses we have in our society with understanding ourselves and understanding why humans do what they do. Because to know others, you must know yourself. That is a huge thing. To know why people have, terrible habits, you must know why you have terrible habits. Again, humans aren't complicated. It's only when we try to put a square peg in a circle hole where life gets hard. Life is it's hard, but we make life harder when we, again, do guaranteed student loans, and we wonder why in 60 years, when young kids want to be an influencer over an astronaut, when they want to be a TikTok star, Instagram star, a YouTube star over a mechanic, an electrician, a plumber, an astronaut, an engineer, a doctor. Oh yeah, by the way, guys, we are going through a doctor shortage. Most people don't know that. We are going through a very, very, very big medical shortage. Even before COVID and before people were getting fired for not taking the vaccine, before that, we were dealing with a medical shortage. So we need to ask ourselves, why do people want to be influencers over actual careers that we need? Again, if in 1965, if I would have said, hey, the guaranteed student loan, these guaranteed student loans is going to cause a drastic shift in our culture, people would say I would have a tinfoil hat on. If I was back in 1971 saying, hey, we probably shouldn't unpeg the dollar from the gold standard, it's going to cause a lot of turmoil in our economy, causing a driving wedge between the rich and the poor, the 1% and the 99%. And by the way, we are then not going to teach our future generations the correct way to understand finances so that we can leverage debt to make make us more money, people will say, oh, whatever, you're crazy. Like, it's fine. We're going to become a fiat currency. If I was sitting there in the 1994, 1996 crime bill saying, hey, this crime bill is going to drastically hurt African Americans and minority communities, which is going to lead for an uprising against police and a cause for a cultural revolution, people will say, hey, you have a tinfoil hat on. All these things are real. All these things, need to be understood. And once you understood that humans are crazy animals, we are irrational, you can understand others and you can understand yourself, and then you can start building a better culture. And understand that sometimes we need to go through pain and suffering, the same type of pain and suffering you feel when you do too many push-ups and you get sore the next day, but it makes you stronger. And also we need to build habits. So even though you're sore and you're going through that suffering, you need to build a habit. And then one day you'll have a nice chest and you can go to the beach and be proud of yourself. And today was a lot of rambling. Please go to Gettr. Sign up for Gettr is an alternative to Twitter. I need to work on Instagram. Instagram wiped all my accounts because of my cyber hygiene. They said I broke their terms of services for bot activity, even though I wasn't. And I confirmed a lot of things. They still were like, no, you are you have too much cyber hygiene, so we're gonna kick you off. If you guys want to hit me up on my email, I do have my email in the description. If you guys want to hear any other topics, I think I would be signing up for Gab, maybe Rumble. I think I'd be signing up for Rumble and a couple of the social media platforms. So just stay tuned. And hopefully I will have some other people coming on soon. I will be having a person from Chicago who works for the Chicago Police Department and is a veteran come on in a couple of weeks. And we're going to be discussing a lot of these same type of topics of understanding why humans do what they do, and second, third, and fourth order effects, and how we can first change ourselves before we try to change the world. In the words of Jordan Peterson, make sure you clean your bedroom before you try to clean the world. And with that being said, this is Tyler Smith, and I'm signing off with Intrinsecus.